In this video, we're going to talk about early signs of abuse in romantic relationships. To understand signs of abuse, we first need to understand how abuse works and why abuse victims tend to stay in abusive relationships, even when things get really bad. First, abusive relationships don't just happen overnight. If that was the case, most people would just leave. But it's not that simple. It's a gradual process. And most of the time, you're not even aware that it's getting worse. Because it happens gradually, you start to tolerate more and more abusive behavior over time. And when you do realize that it's getting really bad and you can't take it anymore, oftentimes you're in too deep. You're isolated, controlled, financially dependent. And if you have children, you're worried about losing custody to your children. It might get to the point where you feel like you don't have any other choice but to stay. What's worse is that it slowly diminishes your self-esteem, and over time, you feel like you're not worthy of love anymore. Like, I'm worthless. If I leave this relationship, then who's gonna take me? With that said, here are some early signs of abuse. Keep in mind that this is not gender specific. Both men and women can exhibit these signs of abuse. The first sign that you should be looking out for is about boundary, to see if they're constantly pushing to lower your boundaries. An example of this could be constant criticisms or judging. They slowly chip away your self-esteem, or they use sarcasm as a joking way to put you down, or backhanded compliments like, I just love how you don't care about the way you look, or you look really good even in that outfit. It might come off as playful and teasing, but if you confront them about it, they'll go, oh, I'm just kidding, I'm just messing around. But if you continue to tolerate this, soon it will escalate to comparing you to other people or trash talking about other people in front of you. Eventually, they might coerce you into doing certain things. They might say something like, I know you usually don't do this, but make an exception for me this time. You see, what they're trying to do is to get you to tolerate increasingly inappropriate behavior. The second sign you should be looking out for is about controlling behavior. One way of doing this is by enforcing double standards. And I'm not talking about standards that are related to genders. I'm talking about standards and rules that are different for you than they are for them. For example, they can go out by themselves, but you can't. They can show up late to a date, but you can't. They're allowed to have friends, but you can't. They can cheat on you, but you can't. You see where I'm going with this, right? The message here is that they are better than you, so they can tell you what to do, but you can't tell them what to do. A second way of controlling is by isolating you from your friends and family. Now, I understand that as you become more serious in the relationship, you get married, you have kids, then your circle of friends is going to shrink. That's normal, but it's not intentional. When somebody is intentionally doing this, they will convince you not to spend time with your friends and family. They'll often use guilt to make you feel bad for not spending time with them. They might say, if you really care about me, then you will spend more time with me. The goal here is to make you rely on them for support, which means that when a conflict comes up, you don't have anyone to go to for a second opinion. Another example, let's say you want to go watch the game with one of your friends, and they go, why? I don't see why you would want to do that. You don't see me hanging out with my friends. This is one of the early signs that they're trying to isolate you from your friends. The third way of controlling is through emotional blackmail. They give you money or gifts so that you feel like you owe them. They would encourage you to leave your job so that you would depend on them financially. They might trap you to have kids with them. That way you're more likely to stay in the relationship. The goal here is that eventually they'll be able to control your whole life. Where you can go, what you can wear, who you can talk to. For example, they tell you, I don't like it when you wear that tank top. And then they see you out somewhere wearing that tank top. They get angry. I told you I don't like it when you wear that tank top, but you do it anyways. That means you don't value my opinion and you don't care about me at all. And you respond, no, of course I care about you. I'm so sorry. I'm not going to do that again. Now, every time you look in the closet, you have to think twice about what to wear. Do you see what's happening here? They're gaining control of what you can and cannot wear. Next, we have jealousy. It's normal from time to time to be jealous or to question your partner's loyalty, especially if you think something is off. So it's okay to be jealous. But the bigger question here is how often does it happen? Are they jealous all the time? Are they always paranoid every time you go out by yourself? Do they feel like they need to know where you are or what you're doing at all times? Or are they so hypersensitive that every time you glance at another person, they accuse you of cheating? If you really think about it, jealousy stems from a lack of trust. For somebody who is jealous, they don't trust you to be by yourself because they don't think that you can handle or resist the temptation of cheating. That's why they feel like they need to micromanage everything you do. The next one is emotionally unstable. They don't know how to control their emotions, especially anger. We all get angry every now and then, but if somebody has a pattern of externalizing their anger and rage to the people around them, that's not a good sign. For a lot of people, anger is a very common secondary emotion, meaning they use anger to mask other emotions like guilt, shame, fear, sadness, or jealousy. For somebody who struggles to regulate their anger, they can be more prone to abuse. A common example of this is through intimidating or threatening, hitting things, smashing things. It being emotionally volatile, they insult you, they yell at you, they're trying to scare you to make you back off. Now please understand something. If they have no problem threatening you with the possibility of actual violence, then they most likely have no problem following through on that violence. Because they're essentially saying, I don't know how to control my emotions, so I might have to lash out on something or somebody. And since they can't manage their emotions, any benign comments can be misunderstood. This might make you feel like you're walking on eggshells because you don't know what might trigger them to get angry. Another thing about emotionally unstable is that they are unable to have a calm and collective conversation without raising their voice, especially a conversation about their own behavior. Now, it's worth mentioning that emotional instability gets worse with substance abuse, because substance abuse reduces impulse control. So when you combine a person who has anger problems with substance abuse, this is a formula for disaster. Now, this can also go the opposite direction, which is stonewalling, or the silent treatment. So instead of yelling and making a scene, they just completely shut down. They want to punish you by giving you the silent treatment. They walk away from you. They stop talking to you for hours or days. Or they might still be around, but they ignore you. They refuse to engage with you. Now, this can be done unintentionally because it could be a learned coping mechanism since their childhood. They might do this to avoid fights or arguments, or they might be afraid of your reaction. Or they can do this intentionally. They use the silent treatment to manipulate you to gain control of the relationship. Intentional or unintentional, either way, both are unacceptable. I'm sure all of us have experienced this at some point in our relationship, and it can be really frustrating because it shows an inability to communicate. If you genuinely cannot engage in the conversation, you should let your partner know, hey, I'm really emotional and I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, so I'm gonna need some space for myself. I just want you to know that I'm not ignoring you. We'll talk about this later when I'm ready. That's the proper way to communicate. Next, we have the lack of responsibility. They never apologize or admit that they're wrong. Whenever there's a problem, they always make it about you, how that's your problem, what you're doing wrong. They refuse to take responsibility for their behavior, or worse, they play the victim and they shift the blame to you. This is a classic example. Well, if you haven't done this, then I wouldn't have done that. If you pay more attention to me, then I wouldn't have cheated. So instead of admitting that it's their fault and they need to do better, they're trying to convince you that the problem is coming from you. And here's the thing. The more you spend time with this person, the more they'll get to you. You are who you spend time with. I don't care how strong you are or how confident you are. Every time they accuse you, they put the blame on you. Eventually, they'll get to you. You'll start to believe that it's your fault, and it will destroy your self-esteem. Finally, gaslighting. They make you question your own reality. This usually happens at a later stage, but the abuser can plant these seeds of doubts really early on in the relationship. It might start off as a joke like, haha, babe, your memory sucks. And then it escalates to, you know you can't trust your memory, so how do you know I say that? In a later stage of gaslighting, it might get to the point where the victim genuinely cannot trust themselves anymore. And it's part of the reason why they stay in the relationship, because they don't know that they're being abused. Basically, the point of gaslighting is to get you to trust their words over your perception of reality. This topic of gaslighting is extremely important, which is why I made an entire video about this. I highly recommend you check it out. I give a lot of examples and insight in that video. So those are the signs of early abuse. They can all progress to a more severe emotional abuse or even physical abuse. Just something to keep an eye out in your relationship. As a final thought, I want to say this. Seeing these signs once does not mean you should end the relationship. But if you're seeing multiple signs or a pattern that they're getting worse, that's something to be cautious about. However, you should also try to communicate with your partner to try to work things out, because sometimes they might not realize that they're being abusive. So talk to them and see if they're willing to improve themselves and to improve the relationship between you two. Nobody is perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. We all have issues and insecurities. But not having the motivation to improve, that to me is a deal breaker. If you're not willing to work on your problems, then you will never have healthy relationships. I hope you find this helpful. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious.